As my name is Amelia, I am 32 years old, and for most of my life I believed hard work could fix anything, that if you stayed honest, showed up early and left late, the world would eventually meet you halfway. So I built my life from nothing with no shortcuts, no favors, no safety net. Just long nights, cold coffee, and a stubborn promise to myself that I would never beg anyone for survival again. Not after what I'd already lived through, not after a marriage that ended quietly and taught me how fragile dependence really is. And the morning everything broke, I was sitting alone in my office before sunrise, the city still half asleep, streetlights buzzing like tired witnesses, staring out the window like the skyline owed me answers, because I'd earned this view inch by inch. My company wasn't big or flashy, but it was mine, a small logistics firm I started from my bedroom with a borrowed laptop and a folding table after my divorce. When silence felt louder than noise and work was the only thing that kept me steady, I had one employee at first, and that employee was me. Answering calls, chasing invoices, loading spreadsheets at 2 a.m, convincing clients I was bigger than I was, and now I had 12 people who depended on me, 12 families tied to my decisions. Every paycheck felt personal, every win felt earned. And that morning should have felt like any other, calm, focused, controlled, but my phone buzzed on the desk and the name on the screen pulled me right out of my body, Mom. I didn't answer because lately every call from her came with guilt attached. Every message had a hook in it, subtle at first. Then sharper, like she was testing how deep it could go. "You've changed," she'd say. "You used to be softer. We didn't raise you like this," Dad would add from the background. "Family helps family." And what they never said out loud but always meant was simple and heavy: "You owe us." I let the phone stop buzzing, took a breath, told myself to focus on the work in front of me, but it buzzed again and again, until ignoring it felt louder than answering, so I finally picked up. "Amelia," my mom said, already crying, not easing into it, not asking how I was. Just straight into emotion. "We need you," and those words used to pull me apart, used to flip a switch in my chest that said, "Fix this now, no matter the cost." But that morning they felt different, heavy in a way that didn't move me, like a lie I'd heard too many times to fall for again. She told me Dad was in trouble, said it fast, like ripping off a bandage: taxes, business issues, mistakes, nothing serious, just timing, just bad luck, just temporary. "If you can move some money," she said, "just for a few weeks, we'll pay it back. We always do," and I knew that tone. Soft but careful, emotional but rehearsed, the same voice she used when I was a kid and something was already broken before I knew about it, the same voice that framed urgency as love. And instead of reacting the way I always had, instead of saying okay without thinking, I asked one question that changed everything. "Send me the documents." There was silence on the line, not the kind where the call drops, but the kind where someone is deciding what version of the truth to give you. Then I heard Dad take the phone, his voice sharper, defensive. "Why don't you trust us?" he asked, like trust was the issue and not transparency. And I did something I'd never done before with them. I didn't apologize, I didn't soften it, I didn't rush to reassure. I said calmly, "I do. That's why I want to see the paperwork, because trust doesn't hide." And he hung up on me, just like that, no goodbye, no explanation. The line went dead and the office felt colder. That night I couldn't sleep. The city outside my window moving on like nothing had happened while my mind replayed the call again and again. Something felt off in a way I couldn't explain, a pressure behind my eyes, a tightness in my chest that wasn't fear but instinct, so I did what I always do when things don't add up. I checked the numbers myself. I pulled records, searched names, followed trails that most people wouldn't bother with. Because building a business teaches you one thing fast: numbers don't lie, people do. And the deeper I went, the quieter the room felt, like even the walls were listening. Accounts that didn't make sense, dates that overlapped, businesses registered and dissolved like ghosts. Patterns that weren't accidents but habits, and as the picture came together my stomach dropped, not because of the money but because of what it meant, because the truth wasn't messy or misunderstood, it was clear, deliberate, and familiar. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't a crisis they'd stumbled into, it was a cycle they'd been running for years. And now that cycle had reached me, and sitting alone in the dark with my laptop open and my phone face down, I understood something I'd been avoiding my whole life. This wasn't about helping family, It was about whether I would finally protect myself, and that realization didn't break me all at once. It settled in slowly, heavy and undeniable, like gravity. It took me 3 days to uncover the truth. 3 long days of digging through public records, business registrations, archived loan documents, and shell companies hidden behind fake names and distant relatives. 3 days where sleep came in short bursts and coffee stopped working. Because every new detail pulled another thread loose, and once I started pulling, the whole thing began to unravel faster than I was ready for. My parents weren't in trouble the way they'd said. There was no sudden mistake, no unlucky timing, no emergency that needed rescuing. They were running a financial scam, not sloppy or accidental, but calculated, repeated, and familiar. Something they'd clearly done before and perfected over time. For years they'd been using relatives' names, opening small businesses just long enough to take out loans, credit lines, and advances, then abandoning them without paying anything back, rotating debt from one name to another, one address to the next, dodging responsibility the way some people dodge rain, calmly, confidently, knowing when to step aside. And now they were out of options. The circle had closed. Too many flags. Too many unpaid balances, too many burned connections, and that's when it hit me with a kind of clarity that made my chest tighten. That's why they were calling me, not because I was their daughter, not because they trusted me, but because I was clean, stable, successful, untouched by their mess. I wasn't family in that moment. I was their exit plan, the fresh name, the safe credit, the final move, and then I found something that made my hands shake. They'd already used my name once without asking, just a small account, nothing dramatic, a test run to see if it would slip through unnoticed. And suddenly that weird bank alert from months ago made sense, the one I'd brushed off as a system error because life was busy and nothing else felt wrong at the time. Realizing that they'd crossed that line without hesitation made me feel sick in a way that settled deep, angry in a quiet, controlled way, betrayed in a way that didn't explode but burned slow and steady, because this wasn't just about money. It was about choice, about consent, about deciding for me what risks I should carry. That evening I drove to their house without calling ahead, the same house I grew up in. Same cracked driveway, same front door that never quite closed right. Walking inside felt like stepping backward in time. The same couch where I cried as a kid when Dad yelled about grades like they were life or death. The same kitchen where Mom taught me how to smile through discomfort. How to keep the peace, how to swallow feelings and call it respect. I didn't sit down. I laid the papers on the table one by one, clean, organized, undeniable, and watched their faces change. Mom's face went white instantly, like her body understood before her mouth could catch up. Dad stood up fast, chair scraping the floor, his voice sharp and offended. "You went behind our backs," he said, like I'd committed the real crime, and I looked at him and felt something settle into place. "You went behind mine first," I said, not loud, not shaking, just true. And that's when he started shouting, not denying anything, not asking how I found out, just shouting about loyalty, about sacrifice, about how much they'd done for me growing up, listing food, school, shelter like invoices I'd never paid. Mom cried harder, louder. The kind of crying meant to flood the room and force forgiveness. "We only did this because we trusted you," she said, "because we knew you wouldn't abandon us." And there it was, the trap laid bare, love framed as obligation, trust twisted into leverage. I took a deep breath, felt my feet on the floor, grounded myself the way therapy videos tell you to, and said the words I'd been holding back. "You committed fraud, and you tried to drag me into it." Dad slammed his hand on the table hard enough to make the papers jump. "So what?" he snapped. "You're successful now. This is nothing to you." And that sentence broke something inside me, not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently, because in that moment I saw how they measured my worth, not as a daughter, not as a person, but as a resource. I stood up slowly. "You don't get to destroy what I built just because you didn't build anything yourself." Mom grabbed my arm, her grip tight, desperate. "If you don't help us, we'll lose everything," she said, and I gently pulled away, calm but firm. "You already did," I told her, "when you used my name." I didn't wait for a response, didn't stay for more guilt, more noise, more rewriting of reality. I walked out before they could say another word, the door closing behind me with a final sound that echoed longer than it should have, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. I didn't feel cruel or cold or ungrateful. I felt clear, like a fog had lifted and I could finally see the road in front of me without their shadows in the way. The pressure didn't stop. It escalated in ways that felt coordinated, calculated, like once they realized guilt alone wouldn't work, they sent the whole family after me. Relatives I barely spoke to suddenly had opinions about my character. My phone filled with calls I didn't answer and messages I didn't ask for. An aunt said I was selfish. Another said success had made me arrogant. A cousin texted, "They're your parents, how can you do this to them?" as if whatever they'd done to me didn't count, as if blood erased boundaries. And what hurt the most wasn't the accusations but the silence around the truth. No one asked what they'd done to me. No one asked why I'd reached this point. They just assumed the oldest story in the book, that children owe their parents no matter the cost. Then came the threat I'd been expecting, because when manipulation fails, fear usually takes its place. Dad left a voicemail late at night, his voice low and controlled. "If this comes out, we all go down. Think carefully." And that was it, not an apology, not an explanation. Just a warning wrapped in implication, and something inside me clicked into place so cleanly it surprised me, because for the first time I wasn't scared of losing them, I was scared of losing myself. I met with a lawyer the next morning. Walked into that office like I was going to a meeting instead of a turning point. I didn't cry, didn't shake, didn't dramatize anything. I told the truth clean and simple. Dates, documents, names, facts. I reported everything that involved my name and only that, nothing more and nothing less. Because this wasn't revenge, I wasn't trying to punish them or make a statement. I was protecting my life, my credit, my future, the company I'd built with my own hands. When authorities contacted my parents, they knew immediately it was me. Mom showed up at my office unannounced 2 days later. Stormed into the lobby like she owned the place, screaming loud enough that my employees froze at their desks. "You ruined us," she cried, "after everything we did for you." And I felt something shift inside me, not anger, not shame, just resolve. I stepped outside with her so my team wouldn't have to witness it, calm and steady the way I'd learned to be under pressure. "No," I said quietly, "I stopped you from ruining me." She stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore, slapped the glass door behind her so hard it echoed, and walked away without looking back. That night I blocked every number connected to them. Parents, cousins, aunts, anyone who thought their opinion outweighed my reality. I expected to feel empty, hollowed out by loss, but instead I felt light. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for years without realizing it. Freedom wasn't dramatic or loud the way movies make it seem. It was quiet, almost awkward, lonely in places I didn't expect. There were nights when the silence felt too big and mornings when I wondered who I was without constant obligation. And I realized I had to rebuild parts of myself I didn't even know were broken, especially the part that believed love meant sacrifice without limits. That if you said no, you were cruel, that boundaries were betrayal. I started therapy and learned how deep those beliefs ran, how often I'd been trained to prioritize other people's comfort over my own safety. I doubled down on my business with a clarity I'd never had before. Raised my prices because I finally believed my work was worth it. Fired one toxic client who treated urgency like power. Hired 2 better ones who respected my time. My company grew not just in numbers but in confidence. For the first time, my success didn't come with fear attached. I wasn't waiting for the next crisis call, the next emergency, the next guilt-fueled demand. I slept through the night, made plans without checking my phone, trusted my name again, my credit, my instincts, and slowly I understood something that took me 32 years to learn. Protecting yourself doesn't make you cold, it makes you whole, and walking away from manipulation isn't abandonment, it's survival. A year later, my company moved into a bigger space, nothing flashy or designed to impress, just honest growth that reflected steady work and clean numbers, a place that felt earned instead of borrowed. And when I unlocked the door that first morning and stepped inside alone, I felt something settle in my chest. Not pride exactly, but peace. The kind that comes from knowing no one can pull the ground out from under you anymore. I heard through family channels I no longer participated in that my parents were facing consequences. Real ones, not dramatic headlines or prison sentences, but enough to shut down the cycle they'd been running for years. Enough to close doors they'd relied on and force accountability they'd always dodged. And when that news reached me, it didn't bring relief or celebration. It just felt final, like a chapter closing without needing commentary. A few weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail with handwriting I recognized immediately, careful, familiar, calculated. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the counter for 2 days while I went to work, answered emails, made decisions, lived my life. When I finally opened it, the contents were exactly what I expected: apologies that softened responsibility, excuses that blamed circumstance, regret wrapped in just enough emotion to feel sincere if you wanted it to, blame dressed up as misunderstanding. Phrases like "we did our best and you have to understand how hard it was for us." I read it once all the way through without stopping, without reacting, then I folded it neatly and put it away in a drawer, not because it mattered, but because it no longer did. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty or punishment, but because boundaries don't need explanations and silence can be a complete sentence. I used to think being a good daughter meant saying yes no matter the cost, that love was measured by how much you were willing to give up, how much discomfort you could swallow, how often you could put yourself second and still smile. I was taught that sacrifice was virtue even when it hollowed you out. Now I know being a healthy adult means saying no when something threatens your soul. It means understanding that loyalty without limits isn't love, it's control. And that respect goes both ways, or it doesn't exist at all. I didn't destroy my family the way some people like to frame it. I refused to be destroyed by them. I refused to carry consequences that weren't mine, to fund lies I didn't create, to lose the life I built because someone else didn't want to face theirs. Today I wake up without dread pressing on my chest, without the fear that my phone ringing could undo everything I've worked for. I trust my name again, my credit, my future. I sign contracts without hesitation, make plans without backup excuses, sleep through the night without replaying conversations in my head. The absence of chaos has become its own kind of luxury. My days are quieter now, but fuller. My work is stronger because it's rooted in clarity instead of obligation. My relationships are fewer but real, built on choice instead of pressure. There are moments when grief still shows up unexpectedly, not for who my parents are, but for who I needed them to be and never got. And I let that grief exist without letting it rewrite my boundaries. I've learned that healing doesn't mean reconciliation, and closure doesn't require forgiveness on demand. Sometimes healing is simply not reopening a wound that finally stopped bleeding. I built this life with my own hands, every brick placed deliberately, every risk measured, every step forward taken without someone pulling me backward, and I will protect it with both hands if I have to, with clarity instead of guilt, with boundaries instead of fear, with self-respect instead of approval. That choice doesn't make me cold or ungrateful, it makes me free. Because choosing yourself after years of being chosen last isn't betrayal. It's survival, and survival, when it's honest and earned, is something worth standing by without apology.